Okay, sit yourself on your lift and bring yourself into a good cross leg position. So sit and cross legs. Just make sure that you feel like you're evenly distributing your weight between the two seat bones. Just listen to the breath. Hold onto your knees, listen to the breath, and lift the chest. That wasn't in a very good order, was it? So find that your seat bones are level. Hold onto your knees, lift the heart area, drive the shoulders down away from your ears. And then look at something that's not moving on the floor and focus on the sound of the breath. So fill in your lungs from the bottom to the top. Listening to the sound of the breath. Filling the lungs from the bottom to the top and emptying the lungs from the top to the bottom. Consciously breathing into both lungs evenly and breathing out of both lungs evenly. Release your knees, bring your hands into Namaste, press the palms firmly together. Make space in the armpits by extending from the armpits into the elbows. And then with an exhalation, allow your eyes to gently close. Drawing your attention into the breath just to keep the mind occupied, to draw the mind into the physical body. And very gently draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude, something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in your heart area, bring your palms down to the knees, palms facing upwards, backs of the palms on the knees. And then as you raise your head, gently allow your eyes to softly open. Just hold onto your knees, lift up into your chest, lift the heart area upwards and draw your chin down to meet the chest. Keeping the shoulders away from your ears so that you lengthen out the back of the neck. Just breathe even deep inhalations and exhalations. And then with an exhalation, raise the chin up to meet the ceiling, keeping the shoulders away from the ears. And with an exhalation, bring the chin back down to meet the chest, lengthening out the back of the neck. And with an exhalation, draw the chin up to meet the chest, stretching the front of the neck, pushing the chin to the ceiling. And then bring the head back level. Take a deep inhalation, and with an exhalation, draw your right ear down to meet the right shoulder, but keep that right shoulder away from the ear, lengthening into the left side of the neck. Come back to the center, and with an out breath, left ear to left shoulder, lengthening out the right side of the neck. And then come back to the center, take a deep inhalation, right ear to right shoulder, lengthening out the left side of the neck. And then back to the center, and then left ear to left shoulder. Just feeling that stretch along the right side of the neck. And if you stretch deeply, then you should be able to feel the stretch all the way down the arm, even into the hand. And then come back to the center. Just hold your knees, lift up into the chest, elevating the heart area up to the ceiling. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And then turn to the right side, drawing your abdomen across your ribs and your shoulders, observing where there is resistance. Drawing your focus into areas of non-resistance. So we're not ignoring that resistance, just acknowledging it and then drawing our focus elsewhere. Come back to the center. Take a deep inhalation and then turn to the left. So when I say that we're drawing our attention elsewhere, I don't mean externally. I don't mean you start thinking about the ironing or putting the rubbish out. I mean that you draw your attention elsewhere within the physical body, so you maintain the sensation, attraction of the brain. So we draw the brain into the physical body, we draw the mind into the physical body, observing the sensations of resistance and non-resistance. But we don't dwell all the time on the areas of resistance. We draw our focus beyond that resistance into areas of non-resistance, so that we can move without resistance, paying heed to that resistance at the same time. Come back to the center, come off your lift, sit back on your heels, big toes together, knees apart, and just sit on your feet. So just sit back on your heels for a moment. Just observe how the muscles of the legs and the spine and the arms respond to this position. Can you consciously push the shin bone into the shin skin? Push the shin bones into the shin skin so that the thighs activate, so that you can activate the heart area, lifting it up, drawing the shoulders down. Keep the seat bones in contact with the heels, and then come forward gently, gradually into Adho Mukha Virasana, maintaining connection with the seat bones and the heels. Just listening to the breath. And then bring the forehead down. Turn the tailbone in. Draw the tailbone down towards your heel. Listen to the breath. Come up onto your knees. Your hands as wide apart as the mat, little fingers on the edge of the mat, stretch the thumbs towards each other, turn your toes under, and then come up into dog down, bending your knees initially so that you can scoop the seat bones up to the ceiling. Breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations. Listening to the breath. Activating the thighs, lifting the thigh muscles up towards the top of the leg, pushing the fronts of the thighs through to the backs of the thighs, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards so that the heels start to separate. Observe that you're pushing the palm of the hand, not the heel of the hand, into the floor. Distributing the weight away from the heel of the hand. If you press the heel of the hand into the floor, if you let all of the weight drive into the heel of the hand, it becomes heavy in the shoulders. So press the palm skin, the palm knuckles, the fingertips into the floor to distribute the weight away from the heel of the hands. Breathe even deep inhalations and exhalations, listening to the breath. Step your feet forwards, just come up into a standing position, and then getting your blocks for half uttanasana. Bring your feet as wide apart as the mat, turning your toes inwards so that the outside edge of your foot lines up with the edge of the mat. So engage the legs in the same way as you were doing in dog down. So activate the thighs, really lift the thigh muscles up to the top of the leg. Push the thigh muscle really consciously into the thigh bone, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards. Spread the toes. Tighten the kneecaps, hit the shins back so that your weight goes into your heels, and then lift up into the heart area. Tuck in the tailbone in to soften the lumbar. Just breathe in even, deep inhalations. Turn the palms out to the side. So straighten in the arms, turn the palms out to the sides. Lift up into the chest. So really straighten the arms, spread into the fingertips. Spread into the fingertips. That's it. Lift up into the chest. And then raise your arms up towards the ceiling so that they're parallel to each other. The palms are facing each other initially. Keep the legs really firmly activated. Pressing the thigh muscle into the bone, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards. It gives you space in your hips. Literally turning the femur bone in the socket, turning it inwards. Hinge at the hips, keep the head lifted, keep the heart area lifted. As you come forwards, hinging at the hips. When you're halfway, just reach down and find the blocks, keeping the back straight. Bring the blocks underneath your shoulders. So again, activating your legs as you were doing in dog down, lifting this frontal thigh muscle up to the top of the leg, pushing the front of the thigh muscle into the thigh bone, turning the front of the thigh muscle inwards. So that focus on the thigh, on the front of the thigh, has repercussions in lots of places. It broadens the back of the thigh, but it gives you space in the hips to come forwards. Project the chin and the chest forwards, lifting the seat bones and the tailbone up to the ceiling. So can you lift the seat bones and the tailbone? So Nick, can you lift the sternum bone towards the chin a little more so that you concave in the shoulder blade region? Just keep going back to the legs, going back to the feeling of the legs, ensuring that they're working evenly, that the left leg is working evenly with the right leg, lifting out of the feet into the hips. If you can go down any lower, then do, but not at the expense of rounding the back. So can you straighten your back? So lift up the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. The more you turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, that's it, the more you turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, the more you can pick up the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. The more you can lift the tailbone, the more you can project the chin and the chest forwards. If you can reach the floor, then do. Really maintaining those dog down legs. They're really tadasana legs, aren't they? Lifting the thigh muscles, pushing the fronts of the thighs into the backs of the thighs, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards from the little toe side to the big toe side. The more you can activate that turn of the legs, the more space you'll have to pick up the seat bones, to lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. The more you'll be able to extend into the spine, lengthening the front chest forwards. Okay, bring your hands into your hips and then bend your knees on the way up if you need to, and then come up into a standing position. Good. So just come into Tadasana. So that action of the legs, that lifting, pushing in and turning inwards is Tadasana, really, isn't it? So have the inner edge of your feet together. Have the inner edge of the feet together, tighten the kneecaps. Activate those thighs, lift the fronts of the thighs up to the top of the thigh. Push the front of the thigh into the bone. And then turn the fronts of the thighs from the little toe side all the way to the big toe side. Think about your inner knees. Push the inner knees away from each other. And then lift the inner knees up towards the groin. And then slice the inner knees towards the back of the room. It's the same action as turning the thighs in. Without disturbing the legs, tuck the tailbone in. Lift up into the abdomen, into the diaphragm, into the collarbone. Lifting the heart area. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards your chest, and then step or jump your feet apart. So just have your hands on your hips for a second and then reactivate those Tadasana legs in the same way as you were doing when the legs were together. Pushing the thigh muscle into the bone, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, lifting up into the heart area. And then turn your left toes in slightly. And then turn the right leg and foot all the way out. So this is where this turn of the thigh differs. You turn this front leg thigh from the big toe side to the little toe side. Just do the wrong thing, turn that thigh inwards. And then notice that this back leg buttock bone, this front leg buttock bone bulges outwards. So as soon as you turn this thigh really consciously inwards, the front leg buttock bone squeezes forwards. So it kind of broadens and opens this, the crease of the groin. So really turn here. Turn the thigh, get hold of the thigh and turn it. And then lengthen from that groin over to the shoulder, to the left shoulder. So keep that left shoulder moving towards the back of the room. Keep your left hand on your hip, reach out and over. Keep turning that thigh of that back leg and then broaden the abdomen from the right to the left. Drawing that top shoulder towards the back of the room and then reach up. Just observe how the sinuses clear as you look upwards. Keep that back leg really firm. Turn the thigh of that back leg outwards like you're doing with the front leg. So we reverse the turn of the legs. But the most important leg for turning is this front leg. Just look down as your head over your foot. If it's not, then lift the chest a little more, squeeze the front leg buttock bone in. Come back to the center. Just release your hands for a second, swap the feet all the way out. So just make sure that this heel is lining up with the instep of the back leg. And then activate those thighs. It's almost like you suck the thigh up into the hip socket. You're lifting the thigh muscle all the way up into the hip socket. Again, turn this thigh muscle from the big toe side to the little toe side. Get hold of it and turn it so that you feel that front leg buttock bone move inwards. And then turn this leg outwards so that the outside edge of the foot presses really firmly into the floor. So turning from the inner thigh to the outer thigh, lengthening from this groin over towards the shoulder. That right shoulder, turning it back. Stretch out with the left hand. Keep turning that thigh. Reach down, find the shin. Broaden the abdomen from the left to the right. And then reach up, looking up. So keeping the thighs turning. So you could say that it's one of the basics of the pose, but when you really activate it, it becomes a really strong and quite challenging action, doesn't it? And then come back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and then step or jump your feet back together, come back into Tadasana. So that turning of the thigh is one of the kind of fundamental principles of standing poses. Sometimes when the legs are kind of splayed out that way and the body is faced that way, we turn the legs from the inside out. When we do, so if we do Virabhadrasana 2, then legs are kind of rolling out this way. So maintain that thought, but in Tadasana, you turn the legs the opposite way. So you try to turn the femur bone in the socket from the outer hip to the inner. Tuck the tailbone in. Lift up into the chest. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards the chest, and then go a little wider than last time for Virabhadrasana 2. So a little wider than last time. Turn the left toes in and the right leg and foot all the way out. Again, making that action of turning the leg out be the first stage of turning this thigh all the way out. So again, get hold of it and turn it so that that front leg buttock bone pushes forwards. Turning this thigh and then turning this thigh all the way out so that the outside edge of the foot comes down. Lift up into the chest. Keep hold of the thigh and then bend the knee, find a right angle, turning this thigh from the big toe side to the little toe side, turning the inner knee to the outer knee, finding a right angle, keeping this back leg really firm, turning the thighs outwards, lifting up into the chest, turning those thighs outwards. Breathing even deep inhalations as you turn the thigh outwards. See if you can squeeze the front leg buttock bone in. And then straighten the leg. Just release the arms, swap the feet around, turn the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out. Again, just mindfully placing the feet so this heel lines up with the instep of the back foot. And then turn. Keep lifting up into the chest, really turning the thigh, keeping this back leg straight, turning the thigh. Bringing this inner knee around to the outer knee. So we're turning the thigh, we're really turning the thigh all the way across so that that front leg buttock bone can push forward. Find your right angle and then look over the middle finger. Just breathing evenly, keeping that back leg really firm, tightened at the kneecap. And then straighten the leg, bring the feet to face the front, and then step or jump your feet back together, and then just come back to Tadasana, turning the thighs inwards, tucking the tailbone in, lifting up into the chest. Just breathing, even deep inhalations and exhalations. Turning the thighs inwards. Listening to the breath. And then bring the feet hip width apart, turning the toes inwards, rotating those thighs inwards, raise your arms up. If you've got a problem with your back, just come halfway, bring your hands onto the wall or onto a table. Otherwise, hook the thumb into the crease of the opposite elbow and then come forward and hang down into uttanasana. Turning the fronts of the thighs inward so that the backs of the thighs feel like they're broadening outwards. Breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations. Turning the fronts of the thighs in, broadening the backs of the thighs outwards. And then release your hands down to the floor, and then just walk your hands, so bend your knees if you need to, walk your hands to the end of your mat, have your hands shoulder width apart, have your feet hip width apart, and then come into dog down. Activating your thighs as you have been in the standing poses, but turning the fronts of the thighs inwards so that the backs of the thighs feel like they're broadening outwards, so that the heels move apart. Lifting the tailbone up to the ceiling. Just do the opposite, turn the heels towards each other, and then just notice the restriction, the instant restriction in the hips. Then turn the heels away from each other again, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, and notice that you can lift up into the hips. If I'm holding you too long in the pose, then rest in Adho Mukha Virasana, but if you can stay and maintain a little longer, then do. Okay, and then just come down onto your knees, sit back on your heels. Just observe how sitting back on your heels suddenly gives great relief to the thighs, to the shins. So this is a good position for sitting if your legs are tired. So if you've got a job where you're on your feet all day, or if you've been for a long walk and your legs kind of feel jelly-like, exhausted, then sit in virasana, and it will help the legs to recover. Push the shins consciously into the floor. Roll the heels apart so that the little toe side of the foot comes down onto the floor. Press the shins into the floor. Activate the thighs. Lift up into the heart area. Okay, and then just release. Just stretch your legs out and then come down onto your back into supta baddha konasana. Just for a moment, just letting the legs again recover. So if there's stiffness in your hips and it's uncomfortable to stay in supta baddha konasana, then put blocks under the outsides of the thighs. Just focus on filling the lungs from the top to the bottom, emptying the lungs from the top, from the bottom, that was the wrong way around, wasn't it? Filling the lungs from the bottom to the top. and emptying the lungs from the top to the bottom. Just be in the pose. Try not to allow your mind to wander. Just stay in the pose, in the sensations of the pose. Stretch your arms up to the ceiling, interlock the fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then lengthen your arms along the floor. If there's stiffness in your shoulders, put some blocks underneath your hands just to support your shoulders. Otherwise, just stretching along the floor, squeezing the outer elbows in, keeping the thumbs in contact, keeping the little finger side of the hands in contact. Drawing the abdomen towards the spine. Raise your arms up to the ceiling, swap the interlock of the fingers, and then stretch your arms up to the ceiling, lengthening your arms along the floor. And then come back to the center, release the hands, just rest the hands on the hips, on the lower ribs even. Just resting into the floor for a moment. Just feeling how gravity is broadening the inner groins. And then gently draw your knees together, have your knees together, your feet apart, just as a counteraction of the action in the hips. And then draw your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom. And then gently roll over onto your right side. And then straighten out the top leg, come back up into a seated position. Just be in cross legs for a moment. Get yourself a belt and a folded blanket to sit on. So we quite often do seated poses without just sitting directly on the floor, but just for today, try sitting on a folded blanket. So get a folded blanket and then put your seat bones onto that folded blanket and then stretch your legs away. Have a belt where you can reach it. And then roll over, move the buttock flesh and the backs of the thighs outwards. So it's broadening the backs of the thighs outwards. So the more you broaden the back of the thigh outwards, the more it turns the front of the thigh inwards. And that just goes to show how each action has a counter action. Have the big toes touching if you can. And again, turn these thighs really strongly inwards. Because dandasana is a forward bending pose. And so we need to kind of do that from the hips. Often people forward bend from their back and then, they try and touch the toes and then never get there because they're trying to do it from from the thoracic spine, and that's really not designed to kind of do anything other than just a gentle arch. So the hips, on the other hand, are designed to hinge, and the more we can kind of activate them, the more we can keep them healthy. So turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, just keep creeping the fingers across from the little toe side to the big toe side, just to give yourself that feeling of turn. So the big toes are together, and the more you turn the thighs inwards, the more the heels will try and separate, and that's good. That's what we want. And then just get the belt and then lasso the belt around your feet. And then push your feet really consciously into the belt, pushing the big toe side of the foot into the belt as much as the little toe side of the foot. When you activate that big toe side of the foot, again, it encourages the thighs to turn inwards. So feel that the backs of the calves are trying to roll from the big toe side to the little toe side. Turn the shins inwards as well. And then lift up into the heart area. Feel like you can turn the femur bone in the hip socket a little. Lift up into the chest. So the femur bone is the thigh bone. It's one of the biggest bones. I think it's the biggest bone in the body, isn't it? Lift up into the chest. So the more you can activate those thighs, the more you can lift into the spine, and the easier it will become to gradually come forward. So just, unless there's a problem with your back, in which case come forward very cautiously. Unless there's a problem, I want you to inch the fingers forwards towards the feet, but turning the tops of the thighs inwards. Lifting the heart area, keeping the head lifted. We're never trying to bring the head down. We're trying to come forward with the heart area. So keep the thighs really consciously turning so that you can lift up. And the more you turn the thighs, the more space you will have in your hips. Now your feet are together, and that can be quite restrictive in the hips. So if you've got quite stiff hips anyway, just bring the feet come back to the center, and then bring the feet a little bit wider apart. Still activating the thighs, but you'll find that having the feet about hip width apart will give you a bit more space in the hips. So just coming forwards a little bit at a time. If you can reach the feet, then take hold of the feet. But it's not the end goal. The aim is to activate those legs, activate the thighs. Lift up into the chest. If you can, I'm going to bring my feet back together. If you can come forwards a little more, but never like this. You're never trying to get your head down to the floor. You're trying to get your heart down to the floor, but you're trying to lift the heart area towards the chin at the same time. So just a little bit at a time, coming into paschimottanasana. So just a little bit at a time. Driving the heart area forward. Okay, and then just gently release. Get a couple of blocks, and then I want you to bring the legs, staying on the lift, bring the legs wide for upavistha konasana. So again, it's tadasana legs. These thighs need to turn inwards. So as you turn inwards, it gives you more space in the hips. So activate the legs from the hips into the heels. Have a couple of blocks in front of you where you can reach them. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, the fronts of the thighs from the little toe side to the big toe side, so that the big toes point directly to 12 o'clock, up to the ceiling. Bring your hands to the sides of the hips and elevate the heart area upwards. If you've got a bad back, then just stay here, lifting up, and you could even raise your arms up, extending your arms up towards the ceiling. If you don't have a bad back, then get hold of the blocks in front of you, keep activating those thighs, and then just a little bit at a time, edge the hands forwards, turning the thighs inwards as you go, lifting the heart area, lifting the head, just a little bit at a time, pressing the palms into the floor, lifting up into the heart area. So just a little bit at a time. If you can come down all the way, then do, but it's not the end goal. Keep the head lifted. Okay, and then just gently walk the legs back and then pull the knees apart, bring the feet in into baddha konasana, and then either hold onto the big toes and lift the chest, or get the belt again, thread the belt underneath the little toe side of the foot, and then lift up into the chest. Just breathing, even inhalations and exhalations. Just feeling the openness of the hips, lengthening from the inner groins into the inner knee, lengthening the inner knee around to the outer knee in towards the hip and into towards the outer foot, lifting up into the chest. And then just bring the legs into swastikasana, into cross legs. So again, staying on the lift. Just hold onto your knees and elevate your heart area up to the ceiling. Take a good deep inhalation and then turn to the right side. Just observing if it feels any different to how it felt last time. If you struggle to reach the floor, then put a block behind you for your hand. And then come back to the center, lift up into the heart area. Take a deep inhalation and then turn to the left. Elevating the heart area upwards as you turn. And then come back to the center. Just come down onto your back. Have the blanket for your head. So just supporting the back of your neck and your head with the blanket. Just hold onto the edges of the mat, pull your knees in towards the chest, and then raise your legs up for viparita karanhi. Keeping the tailbone down, pushing up into the heels. Turning the legs in tadasana, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, so that the heels start to separate, the big toes stay together, the heels separate. So I'm just going to stay here for a moment or two. Okay, and then bend your knees, bring your feet back down onto the floor, and then just lift yourself up a second, just come up into a seated position. If you've got something heavy like a bolster to rest on your thighs, then put that on top of your thighs, just something like a cushion or a bolster, just because we work really hard in the legs. If you're wearing glasses, just take them off while you relax in sirvasana. Just make sure you're in a really good straight line, and then just allow yourself to release into the floor. Feel that you can let go of the leg and the arm muscles, unhooking them, so that the body becomes heavy on the floor. And out of that heaviness, perhaps you observe a feeling of lightness that radiates out from the bones and into the muscles. Into the muscles and the organs. Into the flesh and the skin. Use your in-breath and your out-breath to distribute that feeling of lightness evenly throughout the physical body, down into the tips of the toes, into the tips of the fingers, into the top of the head, and everywhere in between. Inflating the body with positive energy. Just basking in that feeling of energetic lightness. And then when you're ready to disturb yourself, just wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers. And then just move the bolster off your legs, pull your knees in towards your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just a gentle massage on the spine. And then gently roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out the top leg, come back up into a seated position, just a final cross legs with your hands in Namaste. Just a final spinal lift, drawing your breath in through your nose down into the abdomen. Just be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice. A good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions and the forward bends, and the twists and the inversions bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you have created through your practice this morning. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then very gently release the backs of your hands down towards your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. So hopefully you feel as though you've really given yourself a good stretch, but so that you can release your energy for your day. So thank you very much for joining me.